He sold almost everything he owned. No mansion, no entourage, no safety net, just a car, a body full of doubt, and a career that had not yet decided whether it wanted him. He slept in that car some nights. He had no real backup plan, because there was nothing left to fall back on. Less than a year later, his face was on a billboard taller than the building behind it. That's Sam Worthington right before Avatar. And here's what nobody talks about. That's not the strangest part of this story. The strangest part is that almost every major actor in I Will Find You has lived some version of that same sentence. Not literally. Emotionally. A life collapses. A door closes. A reputation gets fixed in place by other people, and years later, they return with something sharper than fame. One of them, in particular, has a real story so close to their character that it's almost uncomfortable to watch once you know it. We'll get there. Stay with this. He plays David Burroughs, a man whose name has already been turned into a headline before he gets a chance to explain himself. That role needs more than anger. It needs exhaustion. The specific exhaustion of being watched by people who already made up their minds about you. Worthington knows that exhaustion personally. Before Avatar, his life was stripped down to almost nothing. He's spoken about selling his belongings, living out of his car, having no comfortable backup left. Then the biggest film in the world happened, and the story should end there, rescue complete. It didn't. Fame solved the money problem and created a new one. He's talked publicly about drinking heavily once the privacy was gone, and later about getting sober. The world assumed visibility was the win. Living inside that visibility was a different fight entirely. That's why his David Burroughs feels heavier than a normal thriller lead. He's not playing a man who wants to escape a building. He's playing a man trying to recover his own name from a world that already buried it, which happens to be the exact thing Worthington spent years doing in real life, just with a different kind of prison. Now the woman who decided to disappear on her own terms. Madeleine Stowe plays Gertrude Payne, a woman whose power comes from silence, money, and knowing precisely what to release and what to bury. For viewers who remember The Last of the Mohicans' 12 Monkeys, Revenge Stowe was never just beautiful on screen. She had distance built into her. The look of someone who knew more than she was saying. At the height of her career, she stepped back. Motherhood got louder than momentum. Here's the part that should bother you a little. A man steps away from Hollywood and comes back seasoned. A woman does it and has to prove she still exists. That's not commentary, that's just how the industry has historically treated the exact same choice. Stowe took the risk anyway. And Gertrude Payne runs on the same instinct, a woman who understands that what people don't know can protect a family longer than what they do know. You don't fake that kind of locked room authority. You either know what it costs to control your own visibility, or you don't. Stowe knows. Now the actor whose entire career almost ended before it began. And it's not the story you'd expect. Most people bring Jack Pearson into the room the second they see Milo Ventimiglia. They don't mean to. This Is Us made sure of that. Here's the trap inside that gift. When an audience loves you that much in one form, they punish you quietly for changing. So watch what the casting does with that. Hayden Payne benefits from a face the audience already trusts. He moves through this story with the built-in advantage of looking safe, and the show is fully aware viewers will extend him the same trust they gave Jack Pearson for free. That's not an accident. That's the show weaponizing familiarity bias, the very real psychological tendency to confuse recognition with safety. And here's the detail that makes it land. As a teenager, Ventimiglia was hired for a sitcom and fired after the table read. Before the world knew his name, a room had already decided he wasn't wanted. He kept working anyway, Gilmore Girls, Heroes, years of Almost There, until This Is Us turned him into the emotional memory of an entire country. Now he's spending that hard-earned trust on a character built to make you question whether trust was ever safe in the first place. That's not playing against type. That's turning type into camouflage. Quick gear shift because this next one moves faster. Logan Browning plays FBI agent Sarah Greer. Before filming, she consulted someone with actual field experience, not for flavor, for the physical and ethical weight of the job. Most actors skip that step. It shows immediately when they do. A badge played badly looks like cosplay. A badge played with that kind of prep looks like pressure. Here's the sharper layer. Greer's real conflict isn't physical, it's intellectual. A file can be complete and still be wrong. A conviction can be legal and still be false. Greer has to decide whether the official version of events is the same thing as the truth. And that question is exactly the one Browning's own early career forced on the industry. An actor boxed into younger, lighter roles, who had to prove there was more range underneath the box. She proved it. The role pays it forward. Back to a slower register for the one with the most uncomfortable parallel in the whole cast. Clancy Brown plays Nicky Fisher, a man whose grudge is old enough to have curdled into something dangerous. Most people know Brown's voice before his face. Deep, commanding, decades of villains, monsters, prison guards, Shawshank Redemption, Highlander, SpongeBob SquarePants, The Penguin. Here's what the screen never tells you. Brown lost his older sister Beth when he was young. That kind of childhood grief doesn't disappear, it sits underneath everything a person becomes. He's supported the Beth Brown Memorial Fund for pediatric healthcare students ever since. Now look at what Nicky Fisher actually is. A man whose old grief calcified into revenge against a family that didn't even cause his original loss. Same wound as Brown's. Completely opposite harvest. One man turned grief into a memorial fund that quietly helps strangers' children. The other turned it into a decades-long act of cruelty against the wrong people entirely. That contrast is the reason this performance doesn't feel like a cartoon villain. A cartoon wants power. Nicky believes he's settling a debt, and you don't play that conviction convincingly unless some part of you understands what real old grief actually feels like. 40 years on. Now the actor everyone's suddenly Googling, and the reason why says something true about how careers actually work. Britt Lower plays Rachel Mills, the reporter who reopens a case everyone else considers closed. For years, Lower worked steadily, mostly invisible to the mainstream. Then, Severance happened, and the conversation shifted overnight as if she'd appeared from nowhere. She didn't. Breakthroughs almost never are sudden. They're delayed recognition. The work was already there, the audience just arrived late. Here's the detail most people miss. The role that made her famous, Helly R., is a woman fighting to prove she isn't who an institution insists she is. Rachel Mills spends this entire series doing exactly that, refusing to accept the official version when her own eyes are telling her something different. That's not a coincidence in casting. That's a director who understood precisely what Lower does better than almost anyone working right now. Then McBride. With a completely different energy, he plays Max Williams, the veteran FBI agent too experienced to be impressed by panic. Before acting, McBride had a music career entirely. Different identity. Different road. Then he moved to LA and started over from zero. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Boston Public, House, Pushing Daisies, Hawaii 5-0, decades across genres. Reinvention as an adult is humiliating in a specific way. You're supposed to have a lane by then. McBride walked into rooms anyway where his old success meant nothing. That's exactly why Max doesn't rush toward easy answers in this story. People who've survived total identity change stop worshipping certainty, because they've already lived through what happens when the first version of you turns out not to be the final one. Now Jonathan Tucker, the one built on instability, not biography. Tucker's career runs on something specific. He makes you investigate him instead of telling you what he feels. Some actors hand you the emotion. Tucker makes you work for it, and you're never quite sure you got it right. That skill comes from decades of supporting work where critics noticed the craft before audiences learned the name. A star can lean on aura. A working actor has to make every scene earn the next one. Watch his loyalty in this story. It seems to shift. Maybe it's not shifting at all, maybe you're just catching up, scene by scene, to something that was there the whole time. That's the kind of detail that only comes from an actor who spent a career being underestimated in close-up. And one more. Because her character carries more than the trailer lets on. Erin Richards plays Cheryl Dreesen David's ex-wife, a pediatric surgeon, a mother who's had to rebuild a life around losing a child twice. Once to a murder that turned out to be a lie, again, slowly, to a marriage that couldn't survive the grief. Some grief screams. Cheryl's goes to work, answers emails, remarries, and still carries one locked room nobody gets into. That's harder to play than the louder version. Too much emotion and it's melodrama. Too little and the audience misses the damage entirely. Richards holds the middle space, which is the realistic one. So here's the cast, put back together. Worthington plays a man fighting to be understood by a world that already decided who he was, and spent real years fighting that exact battle for himself. Stowe plays a woman who controls what the world is allowed to see after deciding, in her own life, exactly what she'd let Hollywood take from her. Ventimiglia plays the dangerous version of a face the audience was trained to trust, built on a career spent escaping the same trap. Browning plays an agent learning procedure isn't truth after spending years proving an industry's first read on her wasn't either. Brown plays a man whose grief became cruelty, while carrying grief that became service instead. Lower plays the one person who refuses the official story, the same instinct that built her entire career before anyone noticed. McBride plays the calm in the middle of a manhunt, earned from personally surviving total reinvention. Tucker plays the loyalty you can't quite verify using a career built on being impossible to fully read. None of this is in Coben's novel. It's the layer underneath it, 8 real lives that happen to rhyme with 8 fictional ones, closely enough that you have to wonder how deliberate that casting really was. So next time you watch, don't just track the clues. Watch Worthington's exhaustion. Watch Stowe's silence. Watch Ventimiglia's familiarity turn unstable. Watch Browning's certainty start to fracture. Watch Brown turn old pain into threat. Watch Lower refuse the answer she's handed. Watch McBride hold a room without raising his voice. Watch Tucker make loyalty feel dangerous. Watch Richards carry grief that the world expects her to have already put down. Because the best thrillers aren't really about twists. They're about recognition the moment you realize you believed the wrong person or ignored the right one. Not because the truth was hidden, but because you were trained to look somewhere else. And that's the real story sitting underneath this one. Every person on this screen has already lived through their own version of the question this show keeps asking. What happens when the world writes an ending for you, and you refuse to live inside it? Worthington didn't. Stowe didn't. Ventimiglia didn't. None of them did. That refusal is the actual title of this show. I will find you, even if you means the truth. Even if you means the person the world already decided you were.